Welcome back. This is going to be part 3 of the continuing battle between the HMS Defense and the French uh, Aquilon. And just to give you an idea of a sneak peek at something for the future. Now, this future game probably, I want to film it, but it's going to be with my son. And my son hates being on the YouTube videos. He's got the crackly teenage voice, and he's like, that's embarrassing. So I said, well, that's fine. So if I film it, it'll be like after turns are done and just summarize the outcome. Wait, did I say what it was? Some Halo fleet battles. I'm hoping I can put some of that up, because that, without going into detail now, because we're here for Sales of Glory, that's like my favorite Starship combat game ever, and I would like to share that, and I'm really sad it went out, but that's something we can talk about another time. And I'm hoping maybe if I get up the courage, I'll get into the Facebook group. There's a Facebook group for it, and they have files that you can order, printed ships, and expand your collections and things, and they have a lot of support. So I might venture into that, but otherwise this will probably just be basically the basic Battle for Reach Halo starter set I got years ago. But anyway, that's just a sneak peek. So we're going to actually go ahead and dive in here. So this was at the beginning of a turn. I think I had just finished, and they had just done combat resolution. So what I will do is some planning. Well, one thing, I did fire, but what I've got to do, and before I forget, because it is a reminder on the chart, is after you resolve the resolve plan musketry fire, and then there's the assign damage from artillery. We did assign the damage. If reload action planned. Alright, so that's like the last part, the reloading phase. So we did fire here, so I've got to move this down. And then from there on, next turn we'll have to plan a reloading action, because we did the fire action. So we'll have to plan our actions. Alright, so we can just go ahead, jump right into the next turn. There was no ongoing damage. We hit, as a reminder, we did do 1 box of damage to the Aquilon there, which is there in that first box with the A, but no fire, no flooding, anything like that, no leaks to repair. So then, change in wind direction. Okay, so we're back to that. Let me go ahead, pause this, set it for drawing from the bag, and get this Halo stuff out of the way. Alright, so recently the wind direction did change, so we're actually kind of starting off fresh with that. I think we had a counter and it went away. So this is what I drew first. So we are on our way to a potential change of wind. I guess you put that little big black dot there on the bottom. Anyhow, okay, that's the start of that. I have not had a change in the wind strength, so that's coming up next. I'm just going to randomly shuffle, and bam, blank, so that goes back in. There's very, very little chance. I think, obviously, they did it on purpose, because I'm honestly feeling like the wind change. Let's see, none. It looks like, I might be doing that wrong. It says here on my cheat sheet that if you draw the none, which is what I'm drawing first, it says return drawn counterpool. And then if I draw a single, place a counter on the wind gauge. Well, I guess if I have the wind and then I draw a clear with it, so I'm guessing I've got to draw the increase or decrease first. If I just draw the clear by itself, there's not going to be a change. So without reading the rule book, I'm just going to go off the little chart here, which I wish they had put the plus and minus here first and then the clear. But it looks like if you get two opposites, that'll go away. So just drawing the blank by itself gives me the impression that there's going to be no change to the wind. I'm going to have the plus or minus first, and then a blank, and then we'll have the wind change. So that's how I'm interpreting it off of the chart and not going back to the rule book. So what does that mean? I probably should have read the rule book, but we'll just say I'm house ruling it based on that little chart that I'm reading. All right, well, now that we've got that out of the way, next thing would be planning the maneuvers. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take some time, plan for the British. I'll then tell you what I'm doing with the British, and then I'll let you know what the computer, I know it's a tablet, so I use the word computer, but you know what I mean. I'm going to then find out what the computer decides to do for the French ship. So we'll be back in a moment. Okay, so for the British, what I decided to do is this turn we're going to execute a shallow turn, and then I thought for the follow-on I'm going to execute a tight turn, because looking at the board, the shallow turn is going to bring me somewhat parallel with this ship, but I'm anticipating that the AI is going to drive the French in a turn away from the border, and at that point, I want to make some tight turns so that I can keep some pressure up on the French ship while I reload. I still want to be in position to fire again. So that's the decision I've made for the British player. And what I can also do, because it's after you plan the maneuvers, just as planning, you can also, it says plan your crew actions. So I definitely wanted to make sure that I found the reload. So I'm going to put that right there, because I got to reload that port gun, which is the delayed action. So we'll flip it. I guess I don't need to, but the idea is you flip it, realize that's delayed, and then you have to wait till the end of the next turn in the reload phase to actually move round up. But I'll just go ahead and leave that face up. In a two-player game, you want to put that face down, but just me, and I'll have to remember that that's a delayed action. Almost wish there was if I had two of those, and you just remove it, or some little tracker for the future. I should have no problems remembering that's my delayed action. But anyway, let's go see what the computer says for the French player. All right, well, as anticipated, the computer is doing a good job of driving it away from the border, but it also is driving it into the wind. I'm hoping, though, on the next turn with it's going to do a backing action, and because the veer rating of that maneuver is a 4, I'm hoping that this will start tacking it in the other direction across the wind, which it looks like it will. So that's actually not a bad decision. I think that's a smart decision by the computer, and we'll see how that plays out. I don't know, just kind of based on attitude to the wind, exactly how that will get it to the border or across the border, but we should be good, because after we have plotted and revealed the action, also the computer had no recommended actions for the ship, so it said undefined. Because I told it the cannons were loaded, it's got the range, which is theoretically in range to shoot, so I'm not quite sure what the hesitation is with firing, but it still has, well, yeah, because it technically could have hit, so I'm not quite sure what the hesitation on firing is. What I'll do next time is probably, well, let me try something now. I was leaving, since I know it's going to do a close 4, let me go grab that maneuver card real fast. Sorry, you're just kind of staring at a screen with nothing going on. What I am going to do with you all is, I'm curious, on the ship action spot, I'm just making sure I got the 4. The picture doesn't match exactly, but I've got the veer maneuver 4 at the ship. I'm just going to set near the ship. Now, one thing I did not do, let's see what you can see. You can pretty much see it all. I did put in the crew actions, so both sides are loaded, has 4 crew actions. Now, I am going to do, click for previous repair actions. Solo ship has already repaired. Solo ship, maybe it's missing this. I'm going to put solo ship has not repaired anything, which is true. It is at full sails. I'm going to put secondary target. I think there's one in here that says there's no secondary targets. And then there's no crew is not busy. So maybe I just needed to fill in a couple extra things, and if I'm gonna push the button. Okay, so it probably could have fired last turn. I thought I was putting in just enough to answer what was relevant, but I needed to go ahead and just answer everything so that the AI had a chance to make a good decision. And as you can see, it wants to fire the port side, and that's correct. All right, so let me go ahead and get ready to maneuver, and then we'll do some firing, because now the AI has a fighting spirit, even though I kind of thought I was doing good, but I'm glad I went ahead, come back, showed you I needed to fill out that entire top section, and now it's making good decisions. We'll be right back to move them. Alright, so after planning is the action phase. So I did reveal the crew action, which we saw from the computer. It's going to fire the port side, and I've gone ahead and put the marker on its ship form. And I've got my reload action going on onto my card, so that's been revealed. Those are delayed, so that's going to stay there. It's not a repair or anything like that, but it is a delayed action, which will be handled in the reloading section. Now it says, if reload action plan, move face down to the storage box to empty broadside. Nope. Return face up. Okay, so I wouldn't return the face up ammo yet. That's what the reload action will do. That's how you track. So sometimes I get my standard game and the full game a little backwards, but this turn, that action will move the fired counter down to the ammo box. And the next turn, okay, that's fine. I'm tracking it. It makes sense now. We're not doing a fire or anything like that. So the action phase is done. So planned combat and reloading actions left as planned actions. Okay, we're good. Now the maneuver. I'm going to go ahead and move the French ship first. Here we go. Again, I got to check wind attitude, which it'll be beating because it is right into the orange, which you can kind of see there. So because the wind is blowing south, we had just recently turned it, and it's at full sail. So it is a lazy turn, but that's what I was afraid of, is the AI not being able to fully sense the seriousness of his situation, has not really drawn or pulled a card that would really keep him on the board. And again, that could be because I'm not quite fully understanding the system here in the computer. So I said the border distance is zone 1 from him. What I should have done was picked 4 inches. Okay, so let's do this. To be fair, I should have maybe picked, where did I throw his card? I'm going to back him up a moment. I'm going to borrow the British one because the British is doing the same maneuver. So I'm going to put the card here. I'm going to back the French up. So maybe I should, instead of saying zone 1, maybe I should have picked zone 2 as being less than 4 inches away. And then, well, now it says 2. So here it says within 4 inches, but when I put it on the device it says 2. But if I pick the maneuver, it still picked a 4. All right, well, that puts it off the map. And normally, technically, that would be out of the game. So let me, like I said, I'm trying to help the machine out because it doesn't quite, I mean, it's just a machine, right? So you want to take best guess. So what I should do, why don't I, Eddie, take a moment and go look at his veer cards. I was just moving the ship again, but let me go pick a sharper turn for him. Yeah, because that would put him facing the wind again, but that might be to his benefit. I'll be right back. Okay, so going against the advice of the computer, I'm going to try a veer 2, which is sharper turn, and it does actually keep him mostly on the board. I do have a little bit coming off, but I don't think that's enough for me to be scared about. Like, I'm not going to shift or anything like that. I think I'm going to go ahead and keep that there. So we'll put that card back over in his pile, which is now a mess. Oh, hold on. That 4 I borrowed from the wrong dude. That's a B. That was a... Well, these are all B's. I think I've been mixing my cards up here by accident. Here we go. This is the 4 from the British. The British is doing this one. Okay, so let's move over here. I probably should have paused for all that moving around, but you know, it is what it is. I'm going to line this up. First of all, check the wind gauge. Green. So he is not running, but he's reaching. And he's got full sail. All right, good. And he's going to go to the green. I'm doing this backwards. I'm going to have to move the tripod just a little bit. And I hope that's good. Looking at this from the wrong side, I think. Well, that definitely puts some separation between the two ships. I don't know if that's separation I need. I'm going to move the next planned maneuver over. Okay, so here's how they look after the move. And I actually think that is going to put them out of range. So the French ship wanted to fire. Okay, so after we move... Okay, we're not doing continuous fire. It was all planned artillery. So the French ship did plan, but it is now clearly well out of range, which means it won't fire because it's not valid. Now, this is where I don't remember seeing this in the rules, and it very well could be, but it's one of those things where I may have read it, thought I read it, but can't find it again, so maybe I didn't read it. So I love all of your input. If someone were to normally plot firing and then realize they were out of range, would you still count that as fired because, you know, the people might not have known it was completely out of range until they fired? Or would you say that their experience and the captain with his little spyglass and whatnot would probably, the experience would say, yeah, they wouldn't have fired because the experienced captain would have said, yeah, we're out of range. So just curious how you would play that. I'm going to go ahead and just say, yeah, if they were in range and then they moved out of range, yeah, they wouldn't have fired and then forced them to reload. That's how I'm going to play it, is just you didn't get to execute that maneuver because it's no longer valid. Yes, I am overthinking and over-explaining the thought process, but you know, hey, I like to share ideas with you all because you are all my friends and I value your input. Well, now that we know those two ships are out of range, he will not have fired, so he'll stay loaded. No musketry fire, no assigning of damage. Reload phase. So at this point, the reload action gets taken off, resolved, and the cannons are pulled back from the portholes and are ready to start reloading in the next phase. That sounds legit. And then I'll clear the order over there from the French because he'll have to redo the firing action. Alright, well that's cool. Well, I tell you, I wanted more shooting, but I think as I get more familiar with the system and the way the AI works, maybe we can try it with 2 ships. Problem is, with that software, there was a plan for the person who wrote it that they were going to add in support of up to 4 ships. That did not get implemented. So, I don't know, I'd have to look up on the app. Let me look that up. Alright, so here this is on the App Store. and I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm so sorry. Not that you're ever going to see this video, but if you do, or someone who's familiar, that person made it Pasong Terbong, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, I had plans to put in up to 4-player support that never went in, and that could be because this maybe wasn't a very popular piece of software. I'm actually pretty impressed and thoroughly happy with it, so I'm kind of sad that doesn't seem like there was any more support for it. But up to 4 ship support would have been good, because as it stands, if you're going to use this with multiple ships, you'd have to reset the data for each ship, which could be a little time consuming, and at that point it might be easier if you just decided for yourself what each ship would do. So unless someone knows of an updated, there is a system I thought about getting that was just for movement. Didn't really plan out the actions based on all the information you could put in, but it would plot movement, and I think you made some dice rolls. It looked like a system similar to what I saw for Wings of Glory. Someone demonstrated that on the internet. You roll like a die, and based on a situation, the die roll would pick a card. I'm not sure how this system works. It seems to work pretty good though for at least one ship, but sadly the multiple ship support isn't there. Okay, well that's a good little segue. Let's get back to the battle, because we are about to start another turn. Alright, so let's take a look here. For the British ship, I'm trying to turn tight, go with the wind to my advantage to try and swing around so I can maybe get back within range and then fire again. I'm hoping by the time I can get swung around, the cannons will be reloaded, which is why I've gone ahead and chose Veer Maneuver 2. So I'm going to do that twice in a row this turn, and that's what I have planned for next turn. I then planned out to have the reload action, and then the French, they're going to do the first of their backing, because that maneuver kept them on the board, but again put them into the wind. However, I'm hoping that will tack them enough or very close that they will be across the wind and can get back into a fighting spirit, and I'll make sure I move the ship fully this time to take advantage of the fact that I think it's gonna keep them on the board. So we'll move them correctly this time for sure. And the computer said no actions because they did sail out of range. But that was the planning. But again, I don't want to skip sequences, but there was no ongoing damage. We planned maneuver, we did plan the action, and now we get to do the maneuver. So I'll move the French ship, and we'll see how they look after their move. Alright, so they're in the wind, and I move them like a regular move. And then if they had to go twice into the wind, then I'd put it at the back, and then I would move them like so, follow the line. However, they are still in the wind, and that's what their second move will look like. However, they did perform a good tack maneuver. I was actually pretty impressed with the cards, and that the cards were smart enough to kind of pull that kind of maneuver off, and that's actually built into the game mechanics, so that's cool. And the tack that I've learned from some of my simulation games is when you cross, I just messed it up. That's when you cross the oncoming wind. Some of those though you have to make a die roll based on crew experience and things like that, but this has it built into the cards. So again, this is really reinforcing my enjoyment of the fact that this gives you those simulationist things, but not overly complicates it. So very cool, Ares Games. Let's move the British. So I've got the number 2 maneuver, and I'm just going to pick up the camera, shove you over here with me, put you at an angle so I can maybe get it all in one move. They're still at full sails. Oops. And they are, let me see if it's running, because their attitude might be enough now that it's on the orange back part of the ship. Because again, it's just on the south. it's one of those things where it's on the border, but since it's kind of on the, oh, here we go. I gotta get it south better towards the main mast. I'd say it's in the green. We're gonna say there's still, because when there's question, always go for the more beneficial. So we'll say it's still green. That probably puts him off camera a little bit mostly, but there's his new home. We're making tight turns, as tight as we can. Oh, look at that. And now, ooh, I love it. I'm trying to get both these ships. This is turning, now we're starting to see some, I'm kind of glad I took those islands out. And now we're just going to have these circle. I know it's nice to have islands and terrain and kind of break up the monotony of just a wide open ocean. But playing solo like this, I'm okay. And now we're starting to see the solo system is playing in a little bit better. I think I'm getting used to it now. This looks cool. They're lining up, getting ready to engage. Awesome. All right. So we completed the maneuvers. I discarded the first maneuver. I am moving the second maneuver over for the British ship. That's done. Then the combat phase. No actions were given, so no shooting there. And still clearly, I don't know if you can see that, but very much well out of range. So no combat. Now we do the reloading segment. I had an action to reload. So with that in mind, I'm going to load just the regular shot. I'm going to secretly put that up there, and that reload action is done. So I guess reload, it isn't necessarily delayed. I think the two in the book it says are delayed, like actually delayed is putting out a fire and doing a repair. Reload, you just take 2 crew actions over 2 turns to do, and I think that's fine. That's really going to make a difference when you start taking crew casualties. So this is cool. I'm okay with this. The system's working really well. All right. Then it wraps right around to another turn. No ongoing damage. Wind change. All right, let's come over here and check on wind. Okay, there's the wind gauge, and I am now drawing, shuffling them up a bit. Eyes are closed, and I'm drawing. Here we go. To the wind direction flag, and it says nothing. So that goes right back in the bag. So nothing this turn. Okay, then we're going to draw from the wind strength change. Shake it up a little bit, and grabbing a minus. Ooh, okay, now it's interesting, because if I draw the blank next, then the wind strength will change. So there's actually a very good chance for the wind strength to change once you've drawn one of the changes for plus or minus, simply because there's a lot more blanks than those two. Yeah, pretty cool. I'm curious to see how this will go now. Yeah, if the wind is maxed out, now that'd be the one thing. If I already forgot, I'd have to reread if you have the low, anyway, never mind. I'm not even going to worry about it. Okay, so there you go. There's a potential that next turn we're going to have less wind to play with the ships. Then we'll see how it goes from there. Okay, I'm going to go do the planning, and then I'll let you know what we've decided to do, and then we will execute. Okay, so just a moment to tell you the thinking of the British. We're going to go ahead and do, first of all, this turn we're executing another tight turn. And then after that, I'm going to do a lazy turn to kind of straighten it out a bit, because I'm afraid of oversteering into the French ship, especially because the French ship is going to turn closer into me as well. So I'm going to try and not oversteer. And then as we knew, the French player is now going to have to do the second aback, taken back, to complete that maneuver, which is this one here, and that will complete the tack and get them across the wind, and then they can start making some turns from there. And then neither ship has any planned actions because they're not in range to fire, no repairs or anything like that need to be done. So we can actually go right into the maneuver. So we checked for wind, we checked for ongoing damage, we're planned maneuvers, we planned actions, and now we'll execute. I will go ahead and do the French first. Well, let me grab, they're a maneuver B, and I don't know if there's much difference between them. So before I grab and use the maneuver from the British, who's a D, let me grab the correct one for the French. Okay, I'm not really sure. I haven't compared the decks side by side, but at least for these two actions, they pretty much appear identical, but I was just thinking to myself, in case it matters, grab the right one for the right ship. So this is the B for the French. Now, okay, this time we're doing the 2 hourglasses. That goes on the back. So let me back this up. So I'm going to line it up here. And then just move the attitude check. And then you just kind of pretend to follow the white line, you know. And then it comes forward a little bit. And they have executed a complete tack maneuver. And they are facing the British player now. Uh-oh. And that's why I wanted to ease off on my tight turns. So here comes the tight turn that I had planned for this turn at least. And he is still full sails. Let me check and see if he is still in the green. Yep, still in the green. So that might be a little bit tighter than I wanted. Oof, yeah, and then I still have a turn planned. So I'm going to move that over. So we might have to counter turn a little bit. But so far, a lot of action happening down here in the southeastern part of the map. Well, that would then take care of the rest of the turn because there's no reload actions or anything like that, no combat to do. So we would go ahead, whip around to the next turn segment, which would then be the ongoing damage, which there is none. Then the planning phase, we're going to check for wind direction. Let's go ahead and check that. Okay, wind direction first. I'm shuffling. Every day I'm shuffling. And survey says blank. Now the cheat sheet says if you draw that and then a blank, you just take that one counter back. So it's not both go, just the one goes. That's what the cheat sheet says. I'm sticking to it. Check for wind strength. And randomly grab that one. And it says, whoops, blank. Cheat sheet says if you grab a blank, if you grab a blank, and then you have that, well then you gotta send it back. Okay, well here we go. We now have a weaker wind, which means all of the sails count as one less. So if I'm at full sails, I'm actually going to be moving at the combat sail speed versus the slow speed. All right, well, interesting. Well, there's our first interesting part of the game. Well, I don't know, maybe there's been other interesting parts for you, but that is something new for me. Then we're going to do the planning, and like normal, I'll come back after we plan, let you know what we're doing, and then execute. All right, on this new turn, the computer has chosen that the French ship is going to make a lazy turn to the right, which makes sense because it's not a sharp turn, but again, it's just enough to kind of nudge it away to hopefully start lining them up for a broadside. I would say maybe in the next turn, they might start to cross paths a little bit better that they can shoot. However, the British player did have another turn planned, and it was a lazy turn 4, which we had discussed. And then I'm going to do a medium turn after. So this still might not plan out very well for these ships to shoot at each other, or it might work out really good for the French. So we're going to go ahead and move the French ship here. Now, because the wind changed, even though the ship is still at full sails, I have to use the battle speed, and the wind is in the green, or the attitude, so I do move them up a bit. So that's not too shabby for the French ship. And then the British ship, now, see now, this is where it's like, uh-oh, Eddie overplanned. But luckily this wind dropped, so I'm at battle, and I think with the attitude I am beating. Yeah, so we're getting really close to taking my first going backward step. So this is veer rating 4. So right now I am beating, so I actually didn't turn much into the wind. That might be enough to be red next time. Now that's really good for the French player. It's not quite a full broadside situation, but we'll just see how it moves, because remember, I'm going to try to level out a little bit. Let me cheat and look at the attitude. Yeah, see, unfortunately that puts me into the wind, and I don't want to necessarily go backwards. So what I'll do is I'll probably take the red one that will put me not crossing over the wind. I want to go back, which I don't have much choice because I have to go off my veer rating. That was a veer rating of 4 that I just did, which means I'll be taking the 4. So I'm tacking, it looks like I'm tacking whether I like it or not. But that's something I'm not quite sure on. Again, I could read the rule book, but I thought that's the card you take based on the veer maneuver you just did. And so even though I want to not tack, it looks like it's going to have me do a tacking maneuver to the left. If I had to say, I would pick this one so I can not tack and try to force myself out of into the wind. But yeah, let me know what you think. Can you pick the card not based on your previous veer that caused you to get into that situation, or are you stuck picking the card based on the veer rating prior to going backwards, which is why it specifically has like 4 minus, a 5 equal, and a 6 plus. That's how I'm interpreting it, but you all explain things to me so much better than I understand. But it looks like my next turn won't be a lazy turn. It's going to be a sharp into the wind tacking maneuver. So I'm going to put that down, boop, as my next maneuver. Well, as this ended, there were no crew actions planned, so there's no combat. I'm finding myself now just kind of mentally racing through the steps because none of those other steps apply. So that's good. I'm getting comfortable with the rules, which, if I wasn't stopping to talk things out with you, would speed this up quite a bit. But I think we'll go ahead and knock out one more turn and then see what kind of damage we can do. And I'll be back after we plan. Okay, so this is really interesting. I can't wait to see how this plays out. The computer has done a couple of things for the solo ship. 1, it's set up to fire a broadside. 2, it wants to decrease the wind or the sails, so go from full down to battle, which is going to drastically drop its moving, but you know, it is what it is. That is, now that I'm using this system, it would be interesting if it could account for wind direction and wind strength when making the decisions, and I don't see that in there. So I'm curious to see how this plays out, because it chose, based on all of that, it's going to do a drift to the right. So that's cool. And that change in the wind sail is going to put it like barely moving. Like I think that was probably pretty smart. We'll see how that goes, because I'm actually going to be on my first tacking maneuver, right? My first into the wind. So what I did, just in case, was I gave orders to fire port and broadside. So if I don't penalize myself for being not able to fire, then I'm not too worried about that. If I was penalizing myself so as not to game the game, then yeah, I would say that those cannons fired, because in the confusion they were like, yeah, fire away, even though there was nothing there. So I'm gaming the system at this point to say that I am prepared to fire in case the ships do cross paths so that the British could. Other than that, I'm maintaining full sail speed on the British ship. So let's see how it goes. So I'm going to move the British ship first because, well, let me move the French out of the way, because that side slip I think is going to help keep from a collision. Yeah, this is tight. Yeah, because that moving into the wind to tack kind of throws us off. All right, now because he lowered the sails, that takes effect now. So that maneuver I've taken off of his action board. And with reduced wind, he's actually moving on the slowest setting of the sails. And they are beating, so they barely move. It's like, but it's a move. Quite a bit of a move. So at least it might get the rear guns to fire. Not a full broadside like I would have hoped. Okay, and then the British ship. Uh-oh. That was so close to a collision. You do not know how close that was. A matter of millimeters. However, had the system known it was going to be that close, it probably would have plotted and anticipated musketry fire. I think you have to plan musketry fire. In the basic game, you can make all your firing decisions after you see the situation. But these ships, they got enough crew that I will probably do musketry fire anyway. Oh, let's not do that. I mean, I keep hitting that. But you know what? I think just for fun, we're going to draw. I keep bumping the stupid sails. Okay. Yeah, we're going to do musketry fire just to see how that goes. But if I was doing, I came up with an optional rule. The stern guns and bow guns, some ships had them. I'm not going to research exactly how many have them. But you could say for ships with it, my rule was take half the firepower of the forward arc, and that would be what you could apply to the front. So if the HMS Defense had forward guns and I was running optional rules, I could fire either a port side or a starboard broadside action and put 2 damage counters on the French ship. I don't know if that's being overly generous, but I think what I'm looking at in this situation is, I think this is a raking shot, because the red dot for the French ship goes through the front arc on its way to the middle mast. So I think that's a raking shot, which I'll have to look, but I think I have to double check because I get to draw like 2 extra damage chits, which is that's going to be pretty devastating for the British player. So let me double check that real quick. But no firing for the British. So the British player can just put those 2 firing actions aside. And I will fire. You can't, so I'm moving the chits on the card. So I'm flipping the cannonballs to reveal that. So once I find out exactly how many extra chits I'm drawing for a rake shot to the front, I will then draw those and apply them. And actually, based on range, it's going to be very devastating because it's in the orange. And then we'll also draw for muskets. Even though muskets weren't planned, we're just going to say, you know what? As a snap action, they saw they were close enough and they're all taking advantage of it. So I'll be right back. All right, I just double checked the rules and it says, for those that might be following along at home or are curious, on page 25, if I'm reading it right, it says if it's going through the front, then you take 1 extra counter for every 3 points of damage that you could apply round up. So on the rear cannons firing, I do 4 damage. So 3 would give me extra, and then the 1 to give you 4. You draw 2 more. So anyway, long story short, I'm drawing 6 of these orange So I'm just going to pull them out. 1, without looking. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm going to set them near the British ship and we'll come back and look at it. Now there's no return cannon fire from the British. Now we're going to take a quick peek at the musketry fire. Now the French have a musketry rating of 4. So that's very, very good actually. So we've got 4. And again, we'll lay them out and look at the damage. And then the British only have 3. All right, I've drawn 3. I'm going to move the camera and we'll apply the damage and see what happens. Okay, we're going to look at some damage. And so the French player already had a little bit of damage, very superficial. But our first damage here is a 0. So all zeros go in this little 0 column down here. And then I've got 2 crew. So we take that there. And that was enough. Still have 4 actions, so the ship is still very serviceable, but musketry effectiveness has gone down a little bit. And my mind is visualizing how this would look. I would say if you haven't seen it yet, and I think it's on Netflix, I'd have to double check. It's either, I think, Netflix or Amazon, I don't remember, but look for a movie called The Admiral, and I think it's Dutch Admiral. I don't remember exactly who. I had to turn subtitles on and whatnot, but it has some amazingly good Age of Sail type fight scenes, and I think it does a really, really good job of showing what that musketry fire looked like. It's got, you know, like the Marine snipers up on the top of masts shooting down, and you got the people on the decks with muskets leaning over and shooting. And I think that has like a really cool depiction of what musketry combat looks like when you have these 2 giant ships kind of come close to each other. So I'm just imagining I've got all these folks scrambling around on the deck trying to get shots off at the enemy ship to try and take out, you know, leaders and important people and just, you know, demoralize the crew, which demoralized a little bit, took out some of their shooters. Well, let's go see what's happened to the British, because that one got hurt badly. All right, I apologize for the weird angle. Let me see if I can move that a little bit. I was just trying to eliminate as much glare as possible. Well, there, we'll just shift the board. Okay, so the British player took a lot of damage, and we're going to lay these out. And I thought I would wait and lay them out with you. There are some rules on taking additional damage when you have underlined numbers, but that's like an optional rule, and I'm going to skip that because I forgot what that optional rule was. But it's just more devastation for your ship, so we'll skip it. Alright, so we've got them. You can almost see them. They're off camera just a little bit. Let's shift. Okay. Well, there's no zeros. So this is where I take a moment to talk about the chit pull system, which I know some people like, some people don't like. So for me, if I was dice rolling, this is a super unlucky set of dice rolls, if you were going to call that. But the thing is, now that all of these high damaging chits are on my board here, that means there's a lot more zeros left over in the draw bag, that if I fired at the French ship, I have a better chance of drawing zeros. So this changes the outcome of the damage distribution every time you pull counters from this. So, you know, some people I know don't like that, because the odds are always swinging back and forth in someone's favor or not. I'm going to stick with it. I think I mentioned in a previous video, I did find a document someone created where you could, if you had a die 30, roll and apply damage. I did find another chart that was based on a die 6 and a die 10. And so there are some alternatives out there for damage using dice rolls versus the chits. I could also see the chits being kind of a hindrance if you wanted to play a larger scale game where you might not have enough damage chits to go around, because these stay on the ship until it sinks. So, you know, for a very small 2, maybe 3 versus 3 ship game, what comes in the base box might handle the damage just fine. But any bigger than that, and you might say, well, anyway, that's some conversation points for another time. So let's focus on this. I'm focusing now. So you take your highest numbers. Well, I'm going to apply this crew hit right here first, just to get it out of the way. Had no numbers, so we're fine. I'm going to take this 6. That's higher than the burden of 5, so we'll go ahead and place that right there. So that can take no more damage in that box. Then I've got a couple of 4s. Now this 4 and that 4 are going to add together, and that will fill in the next box. However, there's a leak. So I had it in my hand. Oh, here it is. Oh wait, that's not a leak. Yeah, that's a leak. So let me find a leak counter. So there's a whole other bag of these damage trackers. So I now have a leak. I'm going to put it here in the damage. Now, on the very next turn, I'd have to put a water up here and then make sure I assigned one of these crew hands to repair the leak. But that's a delayed action repairs, so that would be the next turn. So I'm actually going to get 2 boxes of water before I can then start doing actions to pump the water. So yeah, that's going to hurt. Okay, so these 2 fill up the next box. Boop. Then I have a 2 and a torn sail. Now there's some rules for tracking how many torn sails you have, because that will also eventually affect, because I think if you, and I had to look because off my memory is not good, but you take enough sail damage and you actually break a mast. So the sail damage this is more like sail and rigging kind of a thing. So it's all part of the movement system. So right now we have a sail right there. Then I have this leftover lonely 1, and that will fill here in this box. But that's still under the burden rating. All right, that did not go so good for the British player. And I think what we'll do is, now that we've played this for a bit, I know you want to see this thing play out more, maybe. I don't know. I'm gonna go ahead and apply the. I forgot there was musketry damage to be done. Haha! Let's not forget those. Oh yeah. See, now we're seeing some extra damage there. So we got 2 from the musketry, and then that goes in the zeros, and some poor unlucky souls caught musket balls. So somebody took a bunch of shrapnel from exploding ship pieces flying through the air, and a couple of these folks caught musket balls. Now, I will say, to be fair, narratively wise, that doesn't mean those were actual casualties. They could be wounded, and if you like story, maybe the person that was taken out in the ship shooting just means that he was taken off station from where he could contribute to the war effort to maybe help move supplies from one cannon to another, or because that will affect your cannonry at some point when you take enough ship damage. See, normally when I started out, these were 4s, but now I've taken enough damage that my cannon strength is 3 on the front and rear and 5 on the side. So maybe you're just reassigning combat strength to other areas. So there's fewer hands on deck because now they're trying to salvage cannons or make effort. That's the fun thing with games. You can create any narrative you want to explain why this is happening. Some people don't. I get that. And when my son does it, it annoys me because it takes away from playing the game. But I think because this is going to be the last turn, I'll end it here. I'll just narrative out this damage because clearly the French ship pulled off a pretty good victory here at the end. Even not planning it out myself, but using that little solo system, the solo system played much better than I thought it would. I'm actually in a position now where both of those ships, let me check their attitude. This is kind of the post-game wrap-up. The attitude actually has them both now. Well, the French ship is still, let me see, I think they're beating. Trying to get a good angle on it. Yeah, it's beating. It's not into the wind. It's beating. So it would probably turn. It would probably turn to starboard a little bit more to try and avoid collision with the British. The British would be executing its second maneuver for backwards, which I've hidden that card right here. And that would actually have possibly, let's see where that would end him. I know you're looking at the board, you can't see this. Let me just quickly move the board here. That would actually, yeah, that's 2. Well, I guess in this case, completing the tack was not a bad decision because the French guy is going that way, and I didn't necessarily want to go that way. I want to be back where I could chase the Frenchman. And then he would probably do another, because he lowered his sails and the wind strength dropped. So if anything, he would probably turn just a little bit. And then both ships could fire again at each other. Well, I just played out a turn. But the French could not fire again because he would have had to have executed some reloads. So he wouldn't be firing again for a little bit because this next turn, yeah, because he'd fire the reload. Well, you know what? I think earlier I might have oopsed on the reload. I think automatically the fired shot, you take that down from the fired box to the hold. You take the flipped up round out because that's fired. Otherwise, this would take forever to reload cannons if you had to do in order to pull the fired shot out of its cannon position down into the hold. So I think that still automatically comes down. Then one action to reload. So he would still have just one turn of no firing. But the British would fire this turn. So the British, based on those maneuvers, if that's about what I think they would have done, pretty sure that's what the British would have done. Well, that would have just put us in yellow. That would have pulled us out. So if I did one more round of firing, the British player did take a little damage. So he's only drawing three damage chits. Let's see what he pulled. I shuffled these up. Well, that would have been good. Rudder damage. So he's got 5. So we would have filled in one more box with those two. So they'd be at the same damage level between the two ships. And then he'd have a leak that he's working on as well. So I could see playing this out a little bit more. These two ships now could be running parallel to each other, reloading and firing. I think after all that maneuvering, they finally got themselves into a parallel position. That probably would have been the more exciting part of this whole game, was if I had just started them off parallel to each other and went from there. But I think it was an amazing journey from randomly determining positions and their positionings and directions they're going, and randomly determining wind strength and all that stuff, and then watching how they maneuvered on the board around each other to get to where we are. So I think that journey was pretty interesting now that it's all played out. And based on that damage, if I stop it right here, I think clearly the French won. If I moved it one more forward, they came out pretty equal. you know, if I had actually applied more damage to the French player. But in actuality, the French player still went out because of the, well, they both then got a leak. And you could fix a rudder and you could fix some sail damage. Yeah, if we had just continued it out a little bit more, they were pretty equal. But if I end it right here, the French player clearly won. So that was pretty good. And I just want to thank everyone who's taken the time to watch all of these all the way through, or even if you just watched a little bit. Of course, if you don't watch these all the way through, you wouldn't know I'm thanking you for watching even just a few minutes of the videos. I just hope that they have given you some entertainment and enjoyment. I've enjoyed the comments where some people have said they feel like getting the game back out to the table. Someone asked, and I forgot to respond, if I lived in Virginia. No, I live in Tennessee. I would love to come to Virginia or anywhere and play with someone. Not happening for a while, but if after all this, you know, pandemic and the world gets to some normalcy, if you are in Tennessee and you're in Clarksville area, let's play. That'd be great. The more that I'm getting comfortable with the rules and playing this and moving ships and that understanding comes, I am really enjoying this game a lot more. And after I do like Halo, I'm going to do some Halo with my son, and I got to clean this up afterward. That's why I'm cutting this early, is because I want to play with my son probably tomorrow for Easter Sunday. But after Halo, I would then want to do some Napoleonics. I've got the Commands and Colors Napoleonics, which I've played with that. That game is a lot easier than I thought it would be. I even have my own little solo system that I like, so I will play that. So I'm excited to play that one. There are some little nuances I'm trying to remember, and so I keep doing little rules references because I played Memoir 44. The two games are similar, but then this has some additions like, you know, the leader's support, supporting units for damage, and what's some other rule, like forming square, coming out of square. Little things like that I know are in the rules, but of course, like anything else, just remembering they're there. And then that's the same with this game. This, even though this is including some of the optional rules and you're going advanced on some concepts, there is actually still a lot more rules you could apply. So this definitely can be as complicated as you want. So I'm very, very impressed with the amount of detail they've put into the game, and all the components you use to track all of that I think are very helpful. But again, if you are interested in alternate ways of tracking data because you don't like all the cardboard, if you go to, and I forget, but if you look up Anchorage Sails of Glory, Anchorage as in not Alaska, but Anchor Port Anchorage, there are some files people have made of like simple ship forms or ship forms that are colorful where you can like maybe slide those into sheet protectors and then just mark off damage or circle actions that you're doing. So there is a lot of support for non-cardboard play as well, if you're interested in that. But I think as far as this game goes, we'll go ahead and conclude it here, as in stopping the video. And please continue to share your comments, and I look forward to, seeing you guys on the next video. All right, thank you everyone. Have a good day. Bye.